It doesn't pay to gamble on a nickel, but we're going to tell you who it's going to end up being for your defense today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us here on Locked On Chiefs. We very much appreciate it. Your team every day is what we do. We're glad that you're here with us. We're brought to you by Monarch Money. Right now, take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use our code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Check that out. We're going to go through on a fun Friday, and we're going to play hot or not a little bit later coming up on who has the best shot to make the 53 and who might be on the outside looking in. Before that, the punt returners are going to make a difference, and it's shifting a little bit. I know Chris knows all about it. I'm a little intrigued, but we're going to start at what is not maybe the most fascinating position, but it's the money position in the NFL. It is the nickel corner, and this team is going to be changing something. I'm looking forward to it. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting. Together with my partner, Chris Clark, we've been doing this for 9 seasons here on Locked On and a couple years before that, covering this team up, down, and sideways. From my coaching background, from Chris's finance background, you get a whole lot of different perspective from us, and we appreciate you being here with us. If you want that much more, get on the text line at 816-357-8781. Now, it's always a gamble, and I like that nickel position because it's versatile, and I think that's super important. But the team doubled down, and before I tell you who I think is going to end up playing this role and see what you think, I find it very intriguing that despite what I feel, and I think most people are going to feel, was a down year all the way around for the nickel position, with Trent McDuffie mostly playing outside, but they kept forcing what I feel is a safety into the nickel corner spot, and it didn't pay off very well. They are allowing that experiment to continue, at least now in OTAs. We'll see what happens in training camp. But Chamarri Connor is still running as a nickel at least part of the time. I still feel that's a mistake. I still feel that while he is aggressive and physical, I think his best plays come when he is in space and can make the most out of pressure, hitting the quarterback and being there to take the ball away. That's where I want him. I want him in the old Badger, like in the middle of the field robber role. That's what I want for Chamarri Connor, but they keep sticking him at nickel. I don't think it's going to last. How do you feel about it?
It's going to be interesting. I can't imagine that that's going to be a good situation for Kansas City. It didn't work last year, and I don't think that there's any real proof that it would happen that it should happen and work this year. Like he can improve, but I don't think that he's going to improve enough to where it's going to change his ability to change direction and to be able to do what he needs to be able to do to play well enough in that position to hold it down. And I think that they need to be looking elsewhere.
I agree completely. And by looking elsewhere, we're not necessarily looking about going back to the days of when L'Jarius Sneed was here. Because Steve Spagnuolo addressed it the other day that, yes, Trent McDuffie is the number one corner, but they like what he does inside and that he can play there as well. That is becoming maybe the harder position to play in the NFL, being the inside nickel corner versus the outside, where you can use the boundary to your advantage and you have a little bit of help there. You are farther away from safety coverage, but it's less options. It's less 2- and 3-way goes. Option routes are not as much of a challenge on the outside. And we know that Trent can do it. But Steve, the other day, kind of hinted at the fact that while they love what he does, they're not necessarily looking to do that the most. So as I spoke with people that are out at practice, what stands out to me is when it's not Trent McDuffie and he's still on the outside, and it's not Chamarri Connor in at nickel, the guy that is getting those reps. And that's why yesterday when we were talking about corner depth, I think he throws a monkey wrench into this plan that all of the Fab Five are going to make this roster. It's CRW. This is the second guy coming in behind Chamarri Connor as that nickel contender. And I think he's ready for a surge. I felt like he got better as it went along. He saw more reps as it went along last year. And I think he's a guy that can step into that role, whether it's just when Trent isn't on the nickel or not. I think CRW is going to make this roster.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing to me, and the question that I'm going to have when we look at this is, with Trent McDuffie, it's a question of, okay, he's your best corner. You know that. Can he play inside? Can he play outside? He can do both. Are they going to have him travel? Because I think that actually is going to change how some of this is also going to play out. Because when you start looking at some of the matchups that he's going to have, and I'm just going to throw the one out there with A.J. Brown. in the Eagles. Is he going to follow A.J. Brown around? Is he going to follow A.J. Brown if he goes inside on a snap or two? Is he going to be that guy that's traveling with the number one wide receivers? That's something that they're intending to have him do this year. Because while we're talking about the nickel position, and I get that, the reality is that it could be Trent McDuffie at times still this year. But I agree with you. I do think that the better option is to have a guy like Christian Roland-Wallace come in and try to take the position from Chamarri Connor, because Chamarri Connor is better in space. He's better as a safety. And when you go back and watch what he was able to do 2 years ago in that role, when he's not the starting safety and he's a guy that is just playing out there in space, he's able to take the ball away and he's able to make plays on the field, which is exactly what you want.
And I think if you hear Steve Spagnuolo talk about it, they want to get Chamarri onto the field more. And I still feel that as the third safety, that's still more than the nickel in terms of what the production will become of that. So if you're going to keep Trent McDuffie outside and Christian Fulton's going to man the second spot, which I fully expect, I would rather see Chris Roland-Wallace come in at nickel and be able to go to a dime set and have that third safety be Chamarri Connor. Then I think that you have two guys that are playing in positions that allow them to be in better position to have an effect on the offense and possibly take the ball away.
Well, and I think the other part of it that's a little bit crazy, and I know this isn't necessarily where you were going with it, but when I think about that alignment and you talk about going dime and you have both Christian Roland-Wallace and Chamarri Connor out there, while it may not be the best role for Chamarri Connor, I would say that you could probably rotate those guys, and it doesn't necessarily have to be one or the other that is at a specific position. And the defense and the offense isn't going to know who's going to be that guy, because both of those guys have played safety before. Both of those guys have played nickel corner before. So it gives you even more flexibility and the ability to choose your matchups based on who they're going against. And I think that's even more valuable than everything else that we've talked about.
Well, and I agree with you completely. And if you're Dak Prescott or if you're Jalen Hurts, you don't know which one's going to come blitzing either. And they're both good at it. So I'm all down for that. Mix and match as best you can. But you can't mix and match when it comes to returning the ball. They're going to find a new punt returner. That seems pretty evident to me right now. Is it going to be permanent? Is it not? And who makes it? That's next. Did you ever open your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track. And that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, spending all in one place so that you can stop managing your money and start building your wealth. Everything is in one spot. It's super convenient. You don't have to do multiple apps. You can go one place and get everything done that you need to know for your finances. Take control of those finances with Monarch Money. Use our code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL, all one word, for half off your first year. I am not the professed king of punt returning, so walk us through what you see evolving at OTAs with the punt returning.
It's just interesting because you look at a situation where it could be Nico Remigio, it could be Brashard Smith, which is a name that we hadn't heard or thought of, and it could be Xavier Worthy. So all three of those guys bring different things to the roster. The reality and the question becomes, and I think that this is the bigger thing for Nico Remigio and Brashard Smith than it really is Xavier Worthy. Obviously, Worthy is going to be on the roster. We know that. I personally wouldn't want to see him as the punt returner most of the time. I'd be okay with time with a few here and there, like specific situations, but I wouldn't want him out there on a regular basis, mainly because when you're talking about that type of position and what he's going to be doing, I don't think his body type is great for taking those types of hits. Because as a wide receiver running down the field, you're not going to generally get, yes, you can get lit up on an overthrow or stuff like that. I get that. But you're still not going to have those types of collisions that you would have as potential collisions as you would have as a punt returner. So I don't like it in that regard. I do like his skill set for it. But Brashard Smith and Nico Remigio, this is possibly how they make the roster. Both of them.
Yep. It's significant. And I hate to keep bringing it up, but the guy that we keep not hearing about is Skyy Moore in this mix, who's returned punts as well. And if Nico Remigio in particular, who got a little bit action late in last year, and I would still count him as a new returner if that's what ended up happening, but he did give you some reps as a returner. And I think that's the key point, is he brought some juice. He lifted that team. He put the offense in a better frame of mind and a better field position because of his energy. And I think if you have anybody who can unseat him and does more of that, that's only a good thing. But it feels to me like that 6th spot is earmarked right now for Nico Remigio.
Yeah. And that is a great situation for Kansas City because at that point, he's your 6th wide receiver. The issue that you have is, can he give you anything as a wide receiver, which is something you would want. But at the same time, you really care more about the returnability and can he fill that role. The problem that you run into with Nico Remigio being that guy is then you would have to have 6 dressed on game day, which generally speaking you wouldn't have unless you're not going to dress Juju, which I guess is a possibility. There's so many different things that are going to play into this. We're going to be talking about the 53 as we continue to go on during the offseason, because you start looking at these positions and like we said yesterday, you're already at a position where you feel like your top 4 wide receivers are pretty much set. And while Juju may be the number 4 wide receiver to start the season, I don't think that's where he ends up. I think he ends up as your 5th wide receiver. I think Royals grows into a role, but he may not be there right to start the season. That's just the reality of how things work with Kansas City and Andy Reid's offense.
And that makes a whole lot of sense. Like there is evolution during the season that will change some of that.
And really quick, the other thing that we don't know how it's going to affect everything is Rashid Rice and his legal troubles, which could also cause a lot of different things to go on, especially when you start talking about these further positions that are talking about punt returner or kick returner or any kind of special teams core guy that's going to make the roster because of special teams.
Yeah. But to your point, though, about dressing that many wide receivers, that becomes problematic. And that's why the practice squad becomes very important as well. And Thornton had a good first week, wasn't quite as explosive the second week. We'll see if we get further reports on some of those details, because he's a guy that could be pushing for that spot as well. And I don't know that they gave him as many looks as a returner in that time. So that's the ace up your sleeve to make a roster, is that special teams work, because you have to have it either way. Now, I wish they would just do away with the shortened rosters on game day, but they're not going to do that anytime soon.
Oh, man, I wish so too.
Right? But on the flip side, if it's not Remigio and you feel like you have too much of a logjam there, do you put that kind of pressure on a rookie in Smith, knowing that he's still transitioning, kind of the opposite of Tyreek Hill in going from wide receiver to running back, but still has that explosiveness? We've seen it on film from college. Is that enough to go off of? The coaches talked up college film all week this week.
So the crazy thing and the thing that makes me wonder on that is when you start looking at the roster and you start looking at who's going to make the roster, who's going to, or what are your numbers going to be? We've talked about there's a real possibility that you could have 10 offensive linemen on this roster.
Yep.
If you have 10 offensive linemen on this roster, obviously you're keeping 2 quarterbacks. That puts you at 12. At most, you're going to want 26. That leaves you 14 more positions for your tight ends, your running backs, and your wide receivers. And that's going to be difficult. Figure you have 6 wide receivers. Figure you have 4 tight ends. That puts you at having 4 positions left at most for the offense.
Right.
And it's tough. Like, is Brashard Smith going to be one of those 4 running backs? I mean, that's how he makes the roster, is if he unseats somebody because of special teams. And because you look at it right now, it's going to be Pacheco. You would figure it's going to be Elijah Mitchell and Kareem Hunt. And then that 4th guy is your question mark. Yep. I mean, we can easily say it could be Carson Steel because he made it last year, but I'm not so sure it's so safe this year looking at how the roster is going to shake out.
I agree. And the quest for explosiveness is real on this roster this year. And I know Andy wants to keep a fullback just like I do. He doesn't want to use him as much as I do. So then that becomes problematic in what you're carrying for what you're using. And I think that's the further conundrum.
The other thing is that Brashard Smith has to be that much better of a returner than another option that they have, because Carson Steel was a core special teams guy.
Right.
He may not play very much on offense, and he may only get a couple of snaps when you're talking short yardage and your different fullback stuff, But I do think that you have the ability to put in a guy like maybe a Leo Chenal at times, maybe in that position. Or here's a crazy one: put in a guy like Kareem Hunt to run as a double running back situation with Pacheco. It doesn't necessarily have to be a specific pullback, a specific fullback type role. You can still use Kareem Hunt for a short yardage and still have effectiveness there. So the question becomes, when you start talking Brashard Smith, is he going to be enough of a upgrade over whatever else you could have on the roster? Because you're going to be taking away a core special teams guy in Carson Steel, who made the roster mainly because of that and fullback play, but special teams was a huge part of it, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a legit point, and that's also his path to the roster. So he's going to be fighting for it too, just like Smith is. It's a commonality and one that is very troublesome, and they're not alone. So who's going to make this 53? We're going to play hot or not coming up next. Uh-oh, you had something there.
I did have something. I was just going to say, don't forget Carson Steel did return last year.
True.
Didn't do great, but he did do some kick returns. So, I mean, he's got value there too. So it's going to be a big question mark when you start looking at this roster and who's going to make it. You're really not going to know. We will find out a lot more when we get to training camp, who's going to take steps ahead, who's going to be able to show up and do different things. And that's going to be important as to who's going to be there. And I cannot emphasize enough how much I absolutely wish that what you said earlier is true, and they got rid of the only having 48 people active on game day.
Right.
It's so stupid.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous.
But it's a salary cap deal. That's the real problem.
I get it.
It all comes down to money.
I don't care.
It all comes down to money.
Come on, I'm not even an owner, and we know what they're making for money. So relax. You can afford 7 extra players on game day. Chill. But that said, you got to get to 53 before you can be on the game day roster. We're going to start talking about who we just have a feeling for. It's 2 weeks into OTAs. We know that's early, but you start to form opinions based on who you're seeing do what. And I'm just going to put you right on the spot to begin with. Does Skyy Moore make this roster?
No, I don't think there's. I don't think there's any way he makes the roster. I think they want him on the roster, and I think that they'll give him opportunities, and I think that he will get probably he will be ahead of some of the wide receivers that he shouldn't be ahead of when training camp comes, just because I think that they want him to have the opportunity to make the roster. I don't think that there's any way that he actually sticks on the roster, because the reality is that I don't think Patrick Mahomes can trust him, and unless he's done something to repair that, there's no way you could have him on the roster. Period.
Yeah, it's the end game is, does your quarterback want to give you the ball?
Yeah. Okay. I'll put you on the spot. Justyn Ross, does he make the roster?
No, it's not much of a question.
Yeah.
He's very good at one aspect of the game that the Chiefs just refuse to use. If they all of a sudden come out and start bombing 50-50 balls, he's in like Flynn easily. But until that day.
I disagree, actually.
Really? Okay.
Yep.
All right.
He's fantastic at 50-50 balls, but there's so many holes to his game, at least what he has shown to this point. I don't think that that's going to get him a chance to make the roster, even if they wanted to do the 50-50 balls.
Okay. Fair enough. I can get behind that argument. I just don't think there's enough of his game that fits in Kansas City, even though they're the team seemingly willing to give him the most chance. I just don't think it's a fit.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. Interesting one for me, Ethan Driscoll.
He might be 53 because after carrying him all last year, I don't think they want to give him up. I think they find a way to do something with, I think, Simmons to do a pup, or they can't do a NFI, whatever. He doesn't have to be on the 53. There's some exemption that he can come on after, right?
I don't think that he could be on the NFI. If they put him on NFI, he's done for the season. But I don't think they could put him on NFI because he's already practiced. So I don't know what you would be able to do with Simmons. Now, could you do a mystery IR? That's possible, because from what I've heard, Driscoll wasn't practicing either. So there's something there, I think. Is he going to be able to practice? Is he going to be able to do anything before training camp? We'll see. Maybe he ends up on PUP this year, and that's that's what happens is he ends up on PUP and never comes off. I don't know. I'm complete speculation on my part because I agree with you. I think that they want to try to find a way to keep him, but it's going to be really hard with everything else that you have going on. We've already talked about the depth that they have at the position, and I don't think you can cut. You're not cutting Wanye Morris. He's one of their top. I don't know where I would put him, but he's one of their top 8 or 9 linemen. So you're not cutting him.
Yep. He's their swing tackle right now until Simmons is fully cleared. And that's the thing. It may be for Ethan Driscoll. The battle is to see how many snaps has Josh Simmons taken in camp. That might be the determining factor. So I'll change my answer and I'll say, you're right. Mystery IR it is.
That's about the only way I see him on the roster at this point.
Okay. For you, on the offensive side. No, we just did offense. So I'll switch that. Can Cam Jones make this roster?
It's tough. Can he? Yes. It's obviously going to be a special teams issue. Can he make the roster? Yes. Will he make the roster? I'd say it's probably 50-50 right now. Until you get, the draft pick's going to make the roster. So there's 4 of your linebackers right there.
Yep.
The question is are they going to keep – they've never kept 6, I don't believe. So you're only going to keep 5. Can he beat out Christensen? Can he beat out anybody else for a special teams role? If he can, then
I don't think he can beat Cochran is the problem.
That was the other one can he beat Cochran? If he can beat Cochran, then he'll make the team. If he can't, then he won't. But, the other side of it is, it all comes down to the special teams. I get that to an extent, but there's also going to be a factor of, okay, who's your backups and how can they play? Because Cam Jones is different than Cochran. Can they all play all the positions? I mean, it's going to be a big question. Special teams is going to be the crux of it, though.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing that is going probably against him a little bit is that the rookie, Jeff Bassa, if Nick gets hurt again, and Nick missed a couple of games last year, Bassa can step into the middle. That's what he just finished doing. Really, every starting linebacker has been a middle linebacker at some point in their careers, Tranquil and Chenault, right? But it does feel like Bassa is a guy that can come in, can stay on the field in coverage, and could fill that gap at middle should Nick have to miss a game or 3 or whatever it happens to be. I don't think that what they saw last year from Cam Jones makes them feel the same way about him.
No, I 1,000% agree with you on that. And Bassa is going to make the roster, so it really just comes down to can he beat out Cochran and for special teams, and I don't know that he can.
Yeah.
And it may not just be Cochran. I mean, you look at the other guys that they have there, special teams it could be a young guy's game.
True. Very true. All right. Okay.
I got another one.
The last one.
Nazeeh Johnson.
Unfortunately for Nazeeh, he is a not. He does not make this roster. I think he does get brought back for the practice squad and given a chance to continue to progress. And let's face it, they do go through attrition at the corner spot. I could see him still getting back on the roster and playing this season.
Okay, so is it the same answer for Josh Williams too? Joshua Williams?
I think Joshua will be a little bit ahead of him. So it comes down to, are they keeping 6? Are they keeping 5 for me for that?
Well, I think they keep 6. I don't think there's any way they keep less than 6.
Okay, then that's still a stretch because I have Trent, Fulton, Watson. I definitely have beyond Jalen. You have those 2. I have CRW making this roster as we stand right now. I don't think there's any way that they can, again, because of the special teams aspect and that he can go into the nickel. And I'm not counting Chamarri as a corner. I think on the official depth chart, I think he is listed as a corner at this moment. I don't think that's legit. So it does depend on how you weigh it out as well.
Well, and you didn't even talk about Noah Williams. So
right. And I'm sorry, that was just an obvious yes. That's another draft pick that is going to make this roster. There's no question about it.
Right. No, I understand it's an obvious. I'm just saying, but I mean, when you start talking about Joshua Williams and you start talking about Nazeeh Johnson, there's so many corners on this roster, and you're only going to be able to keep probably 6. If they make Chamarri Connor a corner based on his stature, I guess maybe 7, but I still think that just means one less safety than they would normally keep.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly my thought, because the competition is real. But if you're going McDuffie, Fulton, Watson's your top 3, fine. If you're listing Connor as a corner, then yes, I think he's in there. But I would say Wallace and Noel are probably right there as 4 and 5. And then Connor's a tweener. And Joshua would be probably the 6th corner if you're keeping 6 true corners, and Chamarri is a safety.
Yep. And Nazeeh would be off the roster at that point.
Yep. That is my thought.
It's just crazy.
It's
going
a
to be
tough
interesting to see how it goes.
It's a hell of a class, that group. And it's sad to see them break up, but natural attrition does stratify players even in the same class. So we're going to see how it goes.
People that want to be upset that they went and paid Nazeeh, $3 million or $3.5 million this year for his restricted, I don't really care, because the reality is you had no idea whether or not you were going to get Nolan Williams. That goes back to the same thing we've talked about with Jalen Moore. You had no idea you were going to have a chance to get Josh Simmons, and you have no idea whether or not he's going to be able to play. So to me, making that move and getting him back at least puts you in a position to better yourself than you were last year, if not at least be where you were.
Yeah, that's fair. We'd like to know what you think. Who's hot and who's not for this 53? Put them in your comments down below here on the YouTube channel. If you're not on YouTube and you're listening on audio, thanks for listening on audio. Go check out the YouTube side. We would appreciate it very much. We're going to be back in full swing, as we always are, all the time as we go through OTAs. Mandatory minicamp coming up, where you'll actually see some of the guys who are not present currently. Don't miss a day with us, as we will be here for you. You be here with us. We would appreciate it. Thanks for listening today, and we'll talk to you next time.